Paolo dimmed the lights, the wall clock by the bar ticked twice, and my son Adrian stood with a crystal glass held too high. To the woman who ruined my life. He smiled at me as if it were a joke we'd rehearsed. It wasn't. If you were sitting beside me, you'd smell the candle wax and Mara's orange blossom perfume threading the air like a warning. My bowl of mushroom soup went cold in front of me. I watched the tremor in my own spoon and pretended it was the air conditioning. "Happy birthday, Mom," Adrian added, and laughter broke around the table. Polite, brittle, the kind that scatters like glass. Lila squeezed my knee under the linen. Across the room, Mara's father, Julian Hart, glanced at his watch and gave the tiniest nod to someone I didn't recognize. Phones lifted. Little red lights blinked like insects. "Ruined your life?" I asked, steady. My voice was the dress I once stood in all night, ivory silk from a wedding that didn't last, but taught me how fabric can hold a woman together. I have learned to stay standing. Adrian's smile widened. "All in good fun." He clinked his glass with a flourish that didn't suit him. When he was a boy, he kept marbles in my blue savings jar and cried if one rolled under the stove. Tonight his eyes were dry as salt. "Speech?" "Elena," Mara purred. She slid a manicured hand over his sleeve, the diamond winking at me like a lighthouse turned the wrong way. My cake knife was in my handbag. Paolo had handed it to me to make the first cut, and the handle pressed against my palm through the leather, a small, sharp reminder to keep my hands where everyone could see. The clock ticked. Someone whispered, "Record," and the room leaned forward as one body. I lifted my glass and gave them the smile mothers are raised to perfect. Inside, something older than anger clicked into place. "Of course," I said. "Let's tell the truth." Adrian lowered his glass just enough to reveal the smirk meant only for me, private, practiced, punishing. That was when my phone buzzed on the table, a single vibration that felt like a fault line opening. I read the preview, and the smile turned to stone on my face. The text on my screen was only a preview. "Your confirmation has been received." But it hit harder than Adrian's toast. Confirmation of what? Paolo's wall clock clicked forward, and the room rearranged itself in my mind. Not a celebration, a stage. I noticed how they'd seated me with my back to the bar light, so every camera caught my face, not theirs. "Smile, Elena," Mara murmured, laying that orange blossom trail across my shoulder. "It's your night." Her father, Julian, stood by the ficus pretending to answer a call, eyes on the door like he was waiting for a cue. Lila, my sister, with her soft cardigan and sharper instincts, leaned in. "Don't react here," she said through her smile. "Breathe." I breathed. I tasted cold mushroom soup and old hurt. I set the spoon down before it rattled. The cake knife pressed the side of my handbag, a thin spine against my palm. When I was a bride, I learned fabric can hold a woman together. Tonight, leather did the job some. "Must have been a misunderstanding," Adrian told the table, charming as a TV anchor. "My mother loves drama." He said it lightly, like a snowflake that carries the weight of an avalanche. His glass chimed against Mara's. Tiny red dots above a few phones blinked. Recording, always recording. I stood. "Excuse me." Paolo moved to block the corridor to the kitchen, then stepped aside when he saw my face. In the hallway, the scent changed from perfume to dish soap and lemon, and the quiet let my thoughts line up. Seat placements, whispers, that text. Lila joined me by the service door. "Say what you need to say when you're ready," she whispered. "Not when they're ready." I nodded and slipped outside into cooler air that smelled like rain and cigarette ends. The restaurant's neon sign buzzed like a fly trapped in a jar. My phone lit up again. "We've processed your authorization." No company name, just confidence. My name sat under it, spelled right, like a signature they already owned. I looked back through the window. Mara was laughing with Julian, both of them angled so the cameras caught their good sides. Adrian watched me from the head of the table, lips lifted in that private smirk. I tightened my grip on the handbag and walked away from the glass, counting each tick of the clock in my head. 3 steps, 5, 7. I pressed call. Someone answered before the first ring finished. Meridian First Bank, this is Nadia, a calm voice said, as if she'd been sitting inside my phone. I read the text aloud. Your confirmation has been received. My breath steamed the service door's little window. The neon hummed. Dish soap and rain tangled in the air. Nadia asked for verification. Mother's maiden name. The last deposit. The color of my first car. I answered, feeling the cake knife's handle through my handbag like a hidden spine. Somewhere beyond the corridor, Paolo's wall clock ticked like a metronome set to panic. Thank you, Ms. Elena. A brief keyboard flurry. I see a Platinum Flex line open today under your profile. Remote authorization. First disbursement queued. I didn't open anything. Silence, then the careful voice they teach in training. There's a notarized assisted signature on file. She read a name I knew only from invitations. Darla Quinn. And a beneficiary business. Harbor Light Consultancy, LLC. Harbor Light. The lighthouse that blinked the wrong way on Mara's ring came back to me. Who added that company? Your designated digital assistant, listed as Mara Hart. The perfume in the dining room had a name after all. My mushroom soup cooled somewhere I couldn't reach. I pressed a palm to my chest and felt the ridge of my old wedding locket, small and stubborn under silk. Freeze everything, I said, right now. We can place a hold, Nadia replied. I'm emailing the documents to you. Check the signatures. We'll flag for fraud and require branch verification. My screen lit up with a PDF. My name, spelled perfectly, floated above a signature that curved like mine, but not. The witness box had a flourish too elegant for any bank clerk. Attached, a transfer order. The first draw scheduled before midnight to Harbor Light. A memo line. Event expenses. Event, I whispered, staring through the glass at the party framed like a painting. Adrian's smile at the head of the table, Mara's hand on his sleeve, Julian's watch catching the light. Every angle planned so my face would be the story. Ms. Elena? Nadia's voice softened. Do you authorize me to cancel the disbursement attempt? Yes. A new buzz shivered across the screen before she could answer. Update. Disbursement initiated. Not queued. Initiated. The neon outside flickered, and the service door swung a whisper open behind me. Elena, Adrian said, close enough for me to smell the champagne on his breath. Everything okay? Everything's wonderful, I told Adrian, and let the service door sigh shut between us. The hall smelled of lemon and steam. I followed the drip of a mop bucket to the back lot where rain made the dumpsters shine like wet whales. Victor, the maitre d', found me first, Tuck's jacket slung over one shoulder. Ms. Elena, he said, voice low. About the bill. Mara prepaid. Cash. 2 envelopes. He glanced toward the neon. She asked for the house lights to be warmer. Said videos are unforgiving. 2 envelopes? My phone buzzed in my palm like a trapped wasp. 1 for us. He touched his vest pocket. 1 for guests. She said, content partners. He fumbled a slip from the register. The header read, Private Event, Harbor Light. The word glowed at me like a lighthouse turned wrong. A receipt curled at the edge like a sleeping snake. Mateo, the dishwasher, pushed out the door with a tray. I saw her, he blurted. Out front. Gave cash to Dee Dee and Cal. They do reviews on Stream Talk. She said, make it trend. Show her face. Don't tell Paolo I'm talking. I folded the slip into my handbag against the cake knife's handle, paper against steel. You didn't see me, I said. I could still taste the cold mushroom soup and the edge of Mara's orange blossom perfume hooking in my lungs. Victor hesitated. There was a seating chart, too. Printed. She taped it to the office door earlier. Said your chair must face the bar cameras. He watched my mouth for a reaction and got none. I'm sorry. Can I see it? He led me past crates of basil, back through the corridor. The office smelled like receipt paper and coffee gone sweet. On the corkboard, names in looping ink, mine centered under a little star. At the bottom, a note in neat block letters. Meridian contact will swing by pre-event. I peeled a business card from beneath the chart. Greg O'Neill, branch manager, Meridian First Bank. A phone number. A smile printed in ink that felt like a dare. From the dining room, the chorus of speech rose again, tinny through the wall. I looked at the card, then at the clock over Paolo's door, ticking with the nerve of a metronome that doesn't care who keeps up. "Victor," I said, slipping the card into my purse, "whatever happens, keep the lights exactly as they are." He nodded. "Of course." I turned toward the hall and nearly walked into Julian Hart. Julian blocked the doorway with a politeness that felt like a locked gate. His cologne, amber and orange peel, pushed past the coffee-sweet office air. "Leaving your own party, Elena?" he asked, the gold rim of his watch catching the light like a small, patient sun. I needed air. I set my palm on my handbag, the cake knife's handle pressed against my skin, a straight line I could trust. Behind him, the corkboard glowed with the seating chart, my name starred, a business card pinned beneath it. Greg O'Neill, Meridian First Bank. "Adrian meant nothing by the toast," Julian said smoothly. "Families recalibrate. Assets move. You'll feel lighter once the paperwork is tidy." "Harbor Light Consultancy," I said. "That kind of tidy?" He didn't flinch. "Event expenses. We all want Adrian to look after things. You've earned rest." The pause curled like a ribbon on a funeral wreath. "Assisted signatures exist for a reason." "Darla Quinn?" I asked. The name I'd heard from Nadia tasted like metal on my tongue. A flicker. Gone. "Not my department." The wall clock ticked, insistent as a drip in a quiet house. Somewhere. Lila's laughter rang false and brave. I slid my phone deeper into the handbag and tapped voice memos without looking. Old hands, new habit. The red dot bloomed in the dark. Footsteps approached. A man in a navy suit appeared beside Julian. His tie, the shade bankers think, means trust. He offered his hand before his eyes met mine. "Greg O'Neill," he said. "A pleasure." "Meridian's finest," Julian added, as if he were reading a menu aloud. Greg's smile was the kind that prefers forms to faces. "We just wanted to confirm Ms. Elena is comfortable coming by the branch first thing." The authorization kicked a review flag. "Nothing to worry about." He lowered his voice. "Branch verification makes everything clean." "Clean," I repeated, and thought of my blue savings jar from when Adrian was small, the sound of marbles clinking like tiny promises. "I didn't authorize a line." "Then we'll tidy that too," Greg said, already turning his shoulder, already elsewhere. My phone buzzed inside the bag, a moth against cloth. Nadia's name. I read the preview. Branch level override detected, disbursement advancing. Julian's smile reached his eyes this time. "See? Momentum." He stepped aside like a gentleman from an old film. I moved past them, the locket at my throat cold as a coin, and watched the dining room fill with phones held high like little lanterns. The clock ticked once, loud enough to sound like a dare. Paolo caught my eye and tilted his chin toward the host stand. A courier stood there, rein on his shoulders, clutching a thick manila envelope with my name in firm blue ink. "For Ms. Elena," he said, voice apologetic. The ribbon string bit my fingers as I untied it with the same hand that had been testing the cake knife through leather. Inside, a letter on heavy paper smelling faintly of printer heat and someone's vanilla hand cream. Clinical concern statement, signed by Dr. Miriam Cole. Words like erratic, paranoid, financial mismanagement. Attached a petition, emergency guardianship hearing noticed for first thing. The page corner wore a tiny coffee ring like a careless bruise. I skimmed the last line. Referred by family advocate Julian Hart. The wedding locket at my throat found the hollow above my heart and pressed there like a small shield. I breathed in lemon and steam and the ghost of mushroom soup I never finished. My thumb slid to voice memos again, then to the number at the bottom of the letter. "Dr. Cole speaking," a woman answered. Velvet professional. "This is Elena," I said. "Your concern statement says you evaluated me." A pause. shorter than a blink, but louder than the clock over Paolo's bar. "I conducted collateral interviews," she said. "Your daughter-in-law expressed urgent worries. There was a video of you distressed." I watched Mara through the glass, orange blossom perfume curving the air around her. "You've never met me." I attempted to schedule. The advocate indicated tonight would be unsuitable. The advocate paid by Harborlight Consultancy? Another pause that felt like a test. "My invoice was routed through their administrative office," she admitted. Paper rustled. "If there is context I lack, Ms. Elena, I can amend." "You'll want to," I said quietly, "before your name sits under false testimony." I let the weight of my age and every year I had spent keeping other people fed and warm fill my voice. I am not incompetent. I am careful. Through the window, Adrian tapped his spoon to a glass. 1, 2, 3. Phones rose like lit candles set for a living funeral. Lila met my eyes and nodded once. The last page in the envelope was stamped earlier this afternoon, hours before the first appetizer. They hadn't reacted to my birthday. They had rehearsed it. I slipped the letter into my handbag beside the cake knife, felt paper meet steel, and stepped back toward the door. "Ms. Elena," Dr. Cole said, voice small now, "what would you like me to do?" "Watch," I said, and walked into the lights. I didn't call the police. I called Suri Dev, the investigator who once found my mother's cameo brooch in a heap of church rummage by listening, not prying. Her voice came warm and gravelly over the kitchen corridor's hum. "Walk me through it, Elena. Slow." I sent photos. The seating chart with my name starred, Julian's card, Greg's, the bank PDFs, Dr. Cole's letter. The office smelled like receipt paper and lemon. The wall clock kept time like a drill sergeant. I pressed the wedding locket at my throat and felt the small oval steady my pulse. "Harborlight Consultancy is a shell," Suri said, fingers clattering faintly. "Registered to a service address that matches Hart Holdings' floor. Julian's domain forwards there. And look at this, Bright Arc Media." A screenshot arrived, a scope line that read, "Event Activation, Sentiment Shift Deliverables, 6 Micro Creators, live tonight." "They didn't hire a DJ," she said. "They hired a narrative." The kitchen door swung and Paolo slipped me a folded napkin. Inside was a receipt copy stamped earlier. Memo. Private event. Harborlight. The paper felt warm, like it remembered the machine. "They've also lined up assisted signature services," Suri continued. "Darla Quinn appears on 3 filings in the last season. Same witness flourish. I'll get you her notary logs." "And the bank?" I whispered. "Branch-level override is a scarlet flag. Nadia can hold the line, but Greg will try to slide it through after midnight. We need either a formal fraud case number or a branch recording that shows you never consented. Keep your voice memos running. Do not confront. Let them talk." In the dining room, Mara's orange blossom perfume hovered, bright as a warning flare. Adrian toasted again, lighter, rehearsed. Phones lifted like a forest of tiny street lamps. I pictured my blue savings jar from when he was small, the clink of marbles, the way he'd cry if one vanished under the stove. My hand found the cake knife through leather. I would not vanish. "Final thing," Suri said. "If Bright Arc seeded tonight, the first clip goes live any minute. We'll want timestamps to show premeditation." As if cued, my phone buzzed. A link from Lila, just the caption. "Look." The thumbnail froze my face mid-blink under text that shouted, "Toxic Mom Humiliates Son." The channel name was one I recognized from Mateo's Whisper, Cal Reviews. Behind the glass, Adrian raised his glass for the camera and smiled only at me. The thumbnail froze me mid-blink, the caption stamped like a bruise, "Toxic Mom Humiliates Son." I could almost taste the phone's heat. In the dining room, Paolo's wall clock ticked like a countdown, and Mara's orange blossom perfume braided through the warm air. My bowl of mushroom soup had filmed over. I hadn't taken a second spoonful. Suri stayed on the line. "Open the share pane," she said. "Good." "See the original field?" A beat. Keys clacking. "There. The first upload source isn't Cal Reviews. It's a feeder account registered to Bright Arc Media. Time-stamped 8 minutes before Adrian's toast hit the room mics. Before, I repeated. The word rang like a tapped glass. Screenshots popped in. 6 micro-creators. Identical caption blocks. Same typo. Ungrateful, spelled with 2 L's. Seeded network, Suri said. Hashtag stack pre-written. The link's route through Harborlight's tracking URL. She sent one more image, a brief titled Sentiment Shift, Family Recalibration, deliverable notes in a neat corporate font. Through the window, Lila drifted by the cake, mouthing, "You okay?" I pressed the wedding locket at my throat and gave her the smallest nod. The cake knife hid in my handbag, a quiet spine against my palm. A new notification slid over the video. Dee Dee Plates mentioned you. I opened it. The clip used a tighter crop, but the same script. Another ping. A DM from an alias, R. You don't know me. I wrote the brief. Slide 7. Make Elena the antagonist. Check your email. My inbox blinked. The deck arrived with a stock photo mother and a red arrow. Guardianship call to action. Tonight. The room beyond the glass glowed warmer now. Exactly the way Victor said Mara requested. Cameras loved my face. That was the point. Suri's voice came low. This is premeditation and reputational harm feeding a financial grab. We need one clean admission. Keep voice memos rolling. Don't accuse. Invite him to explain himself. Adrian won't, I said. He will if he thinks he's winning. The clock ticked. The video's view counter flipped like an odometer. Across the room, Julian signed something on Paolo's check presenter with a pen that gleamed like a scalpel. Adrian looked up from the head of the table, the private smile lit just for me, and started toward the corridor. Now, Suri said, ask him why he hired Bright Arc. I lifted my chin, stepped into the doorway, and pressed record. Adrian met me in the doorway, champagne on his breath and that private smile parked on his mouth. You slipped out, he said. I needed to breathe, I answered, thumb resting on my phone where voice memos pulsed red. Tell me something, darling. Why Bright Arc? A flicker crossed his face, gone as quickly as a camera blink. Everyone uses media support now, he said lightly. You, Spiral. They help with framing. Framing, I repeated, letting the word hang like a picture slightly crooked. He lifted his phone. I saw his calendar for a heartbeat. Guardianship hearing, then a block labeled Debrief, Bright Arc. He shifted the screen away, all grace. We'll talk tomorrow, he said. I have therapy first thing. Boundaries, you know. When Adrian was small, he kept marbles in a blue savings jar and cried if one slid beneath the stove. Boundaries, I said, and kissed his cheek. Mara's orange blossom perfume clung to his collar like a note someone else had written. I left before the cake. Rain made the city shine. The clock on the dashboard ticked with the car's turn signal. His porch light was out. Mara always forgets bulbs and remembers invoices. The spare key still lived where I'd put it years ago when the jar held marbles, inside the empty blue glass on their hall table. I let myself in on a breath held long enough to sting. Their apartment smelled like citrus cleaner and something powdery sweet. In the study, a scarf of Mara's curled over the chair like a sleeping cat. I opened drawers, receipts, a folder, Harborlight, brand assets. Under the bottom drawer, taped to the wood, a spiral notebook waited. The cover read, Stories and Support. Inside, dated entries, each with a title and a price. Urgent dental, rent hike, job loss, then later, birthday, public pivot. Scripts, what to say, who to tag, how to seed. Next to my name, a neat box. Guardianship call to action. Tonight. On the last page, in Mara's tidy print, Phase 2, branch override midnight, list house, secure deed transfer, PR debrief. Paper rasped under my fingers. I photographed every page. The phone camera made its little fake shutter sound like a cricket in summer grass. I slipped the notebook into my handbag beside the cake knife, Paper and steel stacked like two versions of the same truth. A key scratched the front lock. Voices. Adrian's low. Mara's. Sugar sweet. I closed the study door and killed the light, pressing my back to the bookshelves as the clock on my wrist counted down in my own pulse. I held my breath as the hall light snapped on and Mara's orange blossom arrived before her voice. The apartment sounded bigger at night, the soft refrigerator hum, rain ticking the window, the hollow click of the coat rack. I flicked my phone face down to kill the glow. Voice memos kept its red pulse under my thumb. "Ruined my life" was a little on the nose, Mara said, keys chiming into the blue glass on the hall table. "Bright Arc wanted a hero-villain line," Adrian muttered, kicking off his shoes. "They said clarity converts." "Clarity converts," she echoed, pleased. Paper rustled. Phase 2. Julian said Greg pushes the branch override at midnight, listing agent at 10. "We'll show the court tomorrow that you've stepped up to protect assets." Adrian's laugh had no light in it. "And Dr. Cole?" "Amended letter if needed," Mara said. "Guardianship first, debrief later. People love a son who acts decisively." I could smell their dinner wine on the air, hear the tiny tap of Mara's diamond against her phone. The study door was thin as a shirt. I pressed my wedding locket to my throat and felt it steady me like a palm. "She didn't sign, Mar," Adrian said softly. "Not really. Darla guided it." "Assisted signature," Mara corrected. "Legal enough to start the drip. Greg said once the first draw lands, momentum carries the rest." A pause. I pictured her tilting her head. "You're not wavering on me." Silence stretched until the refrigerator clicked again. "No," Adrian said at last. "I'm tired of feeling like a kid with a jar of marbles I have to ask permission to count." My mouth tasted like old mushroom soup. The blue savings jar flashed in my mind, the sound of small glass promises. I slid the spiral notebook deeper into my handbag until its cardboard pressed the cake knife handle. Paper and steel. Proof and spine. Mara's heels moved closer. "I left my scarf in the study," she said lightly. "The floral one." Footsteps. The knob turned. I watched the thin slice of light appear, a blade across the carpet. My phone buzzed once, treacherous and loud in the quiet. Adrian's shadow lifted on the door. "Did you hear that?" The knob turned further, and the blade of light widened toward my shoes. I didn't run. I opened the study door with my oldest smile, the one that soothed fevers and teachers, and once, a landlord with a mean dog. "There you are," I said, lifting Mara's floral scarf like a prize. "Paolo said you left this." Mara blinked, perfume bright as citrus and sugar. Adrian's eyes cut to my handbag, to the outline of something long against the leather. "Cake knife, dear, not a weapon. A spine." "Mum," he said carefully, "how did you—" "Spare key," I answered, nodding toward the blue glass on the hall table. The jar he once filled with marbles. Old habits. For a heartbeat, the apartment held its breath. Rain ticked the window. The refrigerator hummed its small domestic hymn. I stepped past them into the warm light. The scarf soft against my wrist, my wedding locket cool at my throat. "Tonight was efficient," I said. "Bright Arc, Dr. Cole, Meridian, listing agent at 10. I let each word fall like a coin on a counter. But efficiency isn't the same as clean. Mara recovered first. "You shouldn't be here." "Neither should a notarized assisted signature I didn't give," I said, and kept my voice gentle. "Greg will push his override at midnight. Momentum, wasn't it?" I watched Adrian. The private smile didn't quite reach his mouth this time. "You spiral," he tried softer. "We're protecting assets." I wanted to touch his cheek, the way I did when a marble went missing and the world felt unfair. Instead, I lifted my phone, screen dark, voice memos red beneath my thumb. "Then explain it to me, darling, slowly, like I'm the algorithm you're trying to convince." He swallowed. "It's perception. Guardianship makes courts comfortable. The draw pays vendors. Harbor Light just organizes. And Dr. Cole? A pause. Julian connected us, he said, almost a whisper. She didn't meet you because conflict would muddy the statement. Mara's diamond clicked against her phone, impatient. We're done here. Yes, I said. For tonight. I slid the scarf onto her arm like returning a borrowed lie and walked to the door. The blue glass jar chimed when I nudged the table, a small music that used to mean bedtime. In the elevator, my phone lit up. Nadia. Branch override request entered. Escalation pending. And beneath it, Suri. Got Darla's notary log. Video request filed. Do not sleep near your accounts. The doors opened to rain that smelled like metal and new beginnings. The clock on my wrist read 11:42, 18 minutes until midnight. At 11:59, my phone shivered twice on the kitchen table beside my blue savings jar. Nadia, override blocked pending verification. Then, a breath later, midnight attempt recorded. The wall clock clicked to 12. I held my wedding locket and listened to the seconds pass like soft hammers. By dawn, I was under the courthouse fluorescence, floor polish sharp in the air, Lila pressing a paper cup of tomato soup into my hands. For your voice, she said. My handbag felt heavier than leather. Cake knife, notebook, printed receipts, proof and spine. Emergency guardianship. Heart on behalf of Adrian. Judge Rowena Patel peered over her glasses, calm as a winter pond. Martin Keene, Julian's attorney, rolled a television cart to life and cued the viral clip. My face froze mid-blink. Mara dabbed her eye with a linen square. Pattern of volatility, Martin said. Financial risk. Suri sat behind me, warm voice in my ear. Breathe. On my nod. He finished his speech. The clock ticked. I rose. Your Honor, the video was planted before the toast. Suri stood and handed up Exhibit A, the seating chart with my chair starred. Exhibit B, Harbor Lights event receipt. Exhibit C, a bright arc deck titled Sentiment Shift, Family Recalibration. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. Rhea Banerjee took the witness chair, hands trembling around a keychain shaped like a tiny lighthouse. I wrote the brief, she said. Uploads were seated 8 minutes before the toast. The caption typos match our template. Her eyes flicked toward Mara. We were told to make Elena the antagonist. Martin objected. The judge sustained, then unsustained. The room breathed in one piece. Bank? Judge Patel asked. Nadia's voice came through the speakerphone, steady as a nurse's hand. Branch-level override attempted at 23:58. Partial disbursement posted at 0007 to Harbor Light Consultancy. Remaining funds are on hold pending in-person verification. We have video requests for the assisted signature and for Mr. O'Neill's meeting with Ms. Hart. A murmur ran the pews. Julian's expression tightened until his smile was just teeth. Mara adjusted her diamond. The stone flashed like a camera bulb. Adrian stared at the table, knuckles pale. Dr. Miriam Cole joined by phone next. My statement relied on collateral interviews, she said, voice smaller than her letterhead. I am issuing an amendment. I have never examined Miss Elena. Judge Patel removed her glasses and cleaned them with the slow care of someone weighing stone. I will rule after a brief recess. The bailiff stepped forward with a fresh envelope just then, blue stamp still wet. Urgent filing from Meridian, he said. Deed transfer. Expedited. The envelope's blue stamp bled into my fingers like a bruise. Expedited deed transfer, Judge Patel read, mouth tightening. Floor polish and paper dust swirled under the fluorescence. My tomato soup cooled to a skin. I touched my wedding locket. Small shield, steady heart. Call Mr. O'Neill, the judge said. Greg took the stand with a banker's smile that trusted forms more than faces. Martin Keene guided him through gentle steps, routine, procedure, nothing to see. When he finished, I stood. With the court's permission, I said. Rowena Patel nodded once. Mr. O'Neill, I asked, is momentum a banking term? He blinked. I don't follow. I pressed play on my phone. From the corridor outside Paolo's office, our voices spilled into the room. Julian's silken baritone. Assisted signatures exist for a reason. Greg's lower hum. Branch verification makes everything clean. Then Julian again, murmuring, "Momentum!" A hush rippled the benches. Greg's smile cracked like glaze. "Was that you, sir?" I asked. He looked at Martin, then the judge. "It sounds like me." "Please play Exhibit D," Suri said, lifting the little monitor. The bank's lobby camera. Darla Quinn's pen guiding a hand that wasn't mine, the flourish in the witness box too elegant for any clerk. A timestamp blinked in the corner, like a metronome that had never lied. Nadia's voice came over speaker again, steady as a nurse. "We've matched the device IDs initiating the override to Mr. O'Neill's workstation and a remote login tied to Hart Holdings." Mara's perfume reached us from the gallery, orange blossom gone sour. Julian's jaw set. Adrian's shoulders folded in on themselves like bad origami. My blue savings jar, miles away on my kitchen shelf, might as well have chimed in my ear. I lifted one more item, the spiral notebook. "Stories and Support," I read, and turned to the last page. Phase 2, Branch Override Midnight, List House, Secure Deed Transfer, PR Debrief. Ria Banerjee swallowed and nodded from the witness chair. "Slide 7, she said softly. "Make Elena the antagonist." Martin objected on tone. The judge overruled on substance. "Enough," she said, removing her glasses with slow care. "Mr. Keene, Ms. Elena, I will review the recordings and filings over lunch. Return at 2. The gavel tapped once. Phones vibrated like a hive. As we stood, Mara brushed past Adrian and whispered, "Too close to miss. Phase 2 doesn't need a judge." Adrian didn't answer. He just stared at the clock, as if it might run backward for him. That night, I asked Paolo to reopen the private room. He warmed the lights exactly as before. The wall clock ticked with that same indifferent patience. Lila set a bowl of tomato soup in front of me like an anchor. Suri's team slipped in ahead of everyone else. Tiny recorders nested under the table runner, one inside the empty cake box, another near the bar flowers where the orange blossoms pretended innocence. I texted the family thread, "Dinner at Paolo's, no lawyers, let's clear the air." Julian arrived first, tie loosened, cologne like amber and oranges. Mara floated in behind him, diamond bright. Adrian came last, eyes rimmed the way they used to be after losing a marble beneath the stove. "Another birthday?" Julian asked, smiling as if grief were a hobby. "A do-over," I said, "so we can speak like people, not captions." Wine poured. The clock clicked. I touched my wedding locket and let silence do the work. Mara broke first. "Tomorrow will be quick," she said, voice syrup smooth. "Guardianship orders are a formality. Listing agents ready. Deed can move to Harbor Light while the bank tidies the rest." "Even if Judge Patel refuses?" I asked. Julian waved a hand. "Phase 2 doesn't need a judge." He leaned toward Adrian, paternal as a sermon. "We secure the deed tonight with an expedited conveyance. Greg will file the branch note in the morning so it looks inevitable. Momentum." Adrian stared at his glass. "She didn't sign," he said. "Not really." "Assisted signature is an industry tool," Julian replied. "Darla stamped 3 this quarter. You want to be a man who decides, or a boy counting other people's marbles?" The tomato soup cooled. The clock kept time. I let the cake knife sit heavy in my handbag, blade sheathed, a straight line against the spiral notebook's cardboard, steel and paper, spine and proof. "You'll tell your followers," Mara said, brightening. "Sons who protect their mothers from themselves. We'll push the debrief through Bright Arc. Cal Review's already cut the teaser." Adrian's mouth wavered. "It feels necessary," Julian finished. "For everyone." I lifted my glass as if to toast, and my phone coughed a single buzz against the leather. Suri's message sliding across the screen. "Got it. Clean capture. Keep them talking." I smiled the way mothers do when the room is a storm and the roof is holding. "Tell me then," I said softly. Exactly how the deed moves tonight." Julian leaned in, and the red light hidden in the flowers blinked once, hungry. By afternoon, the courthouse smelled like old paper and coffee that had given up. Judge Patel returned, glasses low, gavel quiet as a knuckle on a wooden door. I touched my wedding locket and felt it cool my skin. "We have the corridor recording," she said. Suri pressed play. Julian's voice. "Assisted signatures exist for a reason. Greg's branch verification makes everything clean. Then, from last night's do-over dinner, the soft confession I'd baited. Phase 2 doesn't need a judge. Momentum." The room exhaled as one body. Martin Keene stood, then sat without arguing. Mara's perfume, orange blossom turned sharp, floated up from the gallery. Adrian watched the tabletop like it might swallow him. "Emergency guardianship is denied," Judge Patel said. "Any attempted conveyance of Ms. Elena's home is stayed. Meridian will freeze disputed disbursements to Harbor Light pending investigation. This court refers the matter to the appropriate authorities for potential financial coercion and notarial misconduct." Her eyes lifted to mine. "Steady. Ms. Elena, you remain in full control of your affairs." The gavel tapped once. Phones hummed like bees in summer hedges. I thought of my blue savings jar on the kitchen shelf and heard phantom marbles clink, a sound like a promise kept. Julian's mouth thinned to a line that wanted to be a smile and failed. Greg O'Neill's tie looked suddenly too tight for his throat. Mara adjusted her diamond. It flashed at me like a bad idea. Outside, under a sky the color of dishwater, Rhea Banerjee handed me a folded note, her resignation from Bright Arc. "I'm sorry," she said. Her keychain lighthouse was cold in my palm. "They said it was just optics." Lila tucked a thermos of tomato soup into my bag. "Drink," she ordered. "Victories need salt." I laughed. It surprised my mouth. Reporters gathered by the steps. Suri held up her palm, and they broke like a wave around a rock. "Later," she murmured. "For now, change your locks. Change your passwords. Keep your spine." At home, the wall clock ticked like a calm heart. I set the spiral notebook beside the cake knife on the counter, paper and steel, proof and spine, and finally ate the soup. Warmth returned to my hands. My phone buzzed once on the table. Adrian. A text balloon swelled and stalled. "Mom, I..." 3 dots blinked, stopped, started, stopped again. Then a second ping. "Can we talk? Tonight." I changed the locks before sunset. New deadbolt, new chain, the click like a period at the end of a long sentence. Lila simmered tomato soup on the stove. Suri idled 2 blocks down, engine off, phone on. The wall clock kept a patient tick, steady as a metronome that finally chooses my tempo. Adrian arrived without Mara. He stood in the doorway, damp hair, a coat that still carried her orange blossom perfume like a fading signature. I set my phone face up on the table beside the blue savings jar. The camera's red light blinked. Not theirs, mine. "I'm sorry," he said, the words quiet as marbles rolling in a palm. Julian pushed. "Mara." "You chose," I answered. I touched my wedding locket and felt its oval cool against my skin. "Sit. Eat." We sat with the soup between us, steam fogging the glass. He stared at the spiral notebook on the counter, the cake knife lying blunted beside it, paper and steel, proof and spine. "I'll withdraw the petition," he said. "I'll return what I can. I'll write a statement for Judge Patel. I'll name Julian and Greg." "And Bright Arc," I said. "And Dr. Cole's amendment stays on record. Then therapy, alone. No cameras. No captions." He nodded, eyes shining the way they did when he was small and lost a marble under the stove. From his pocket he placed something on the table, a single blue glass bead. Not one of mine, but it caught the light the same way. "I didn't know how to make it stop," he whispered. "You start by stopping," I said. "No contact until your statement is filed and the funds are returned. Then we'll see who you are." I slid a napkin to him. He pressed it to his eyes and laughed once. Ugly, honest. When he left, the new lock answered with a clean, final click. The apartment smelled of soup and rain, not perfume. I poured water into a crystal glass and lifted it toward the small camera. "To boundaries," I told the quiet room. The red light watched without judgment. My phone buzzed on the counter, a message from an unknown number. "We should discuss terms. JH." I silenced it and opened a new email instead. "To the Elder Justice Fund, Suri recommended. A portion of the recovered money will move there in the morning." The clock ticked on. I set the blue bead in the jar and listened to it settle. One soft clink, like a promise that might hold. Or crack. The camera kept recording, on my terms. At 3 a.m, he sent a voice note. No music, no captions. Just breath and a soft clatter that sounded like marbles spilling across a floor. "Mom, the silence is loud," Adrian said. "Therapy hurts. I don't know who I am without an audience." I listened in the kitchen with the wall clock ticking like a slow heart. Tomato soup warmed the air. The blue savings jar caught the fridge light. On the table lay his returned house keys and a small cardboard box with Mara's ring inside. The diamond looked colder without a hand to boss around. My wedding locket pressed its oval comfort against my skin, a quiet yes to simply standing here. He told me about the sublet he moved into. Thin walls, cabbage smell in the hallway, a ticking radiator that kept time like a metronome for someone else's life, a single plant on the sill that leans toward a stingy square of sky. "Bright art closed my dashboard," he said, "and Julian's number goes to voicemail." He talked to the investigator again, then to the DA. "The worst part?" he whispered. I liked feeling like the hero when comments clapped. Shame makes a room feel heavy, even over a recording. You can hear it settle. He started cooking because his therapist, Dr. Yara, asked him to make something that didn't need applause. He sent a photo of a bowl of soup and a note. "I didn't film it." He sold a watch to repay what he could before the court made it official. He kept the blue bead in his pocket and rubbed it until the paint dulled, a small planet losing its shine with every orbit of his thumb. "The bead helps," he said. "It's something to hold that isn't a phone." Days stretched into a new rhythm. He sent short messages at odd hours, receipts for repayments, screenshots of appointments, a blurry picture of a community garden where he signed up to water on Tuesdays. "The shovel is heavier than a selfie stick," he joked, and then typed, "Sorry." The apology sat there like a damp towel, useful but not warm. When we finally met, we didn't hug first. We sat with 2 steaming bowls between us and my locket cool against my throat. I watched his hands as he unfolded a statement addressed to the court, not the internet. "No cameras," I said. He nodded. "No captions," I added. He smiled without showing teeth. The spoon clinked against the bowl, a small domestic sound that once meant bedtime in a house with fewer ghosts. He didn't ask me to fix him. Good. I can be a mother without being a stage. He spoke about group sessions where chairs are set in a lopsided circle and people pass a tissue box like a relay baton. "I'm the oldest son in most rooms," he said, "and somehow still the youngest where it counts." They give each other homework, call a real person, eat a meal without screens, find a memory that doesn't involve a like button. He walked by our old school once and texted me a photo of the bike rack. 25 years ago, he wrote, careful to keep time relative, "You stood there in the rain with a towel because I forgot my jacket." I remembered. The towel had daisies on it. That day, the sky couldn't decide whether to cry or spit. A week later, he showed me a sketchbook. There were clumsy drawings of keys, a bowl of soup, a ring in a cardboard box, a lighthouse keychain he remembered from the witness. No filters, no titles, only pencil smudges on paper that came off on his hands. "I'm learning how to see without being seen," he said. It sounded rehearsed, but the graphite beneath his nails did not. The legal letters arrived like migrating birds, predictable, unavoidable. Updates on charges for Julian and Greg, notices for interviews, deposition dates circled in red. Cole mailed a formal amendment printed on heavier paper than apologies usually earn. I slipped it into a folder labeled Spine, the old cake knife boxed away behind it in a drawer that now holds napkins and warranties. Paper and steel can share a drawer if you promise not to reach for both at once. Mara tried to send a message through a friend with a voice like sugar on ice. "No," I said, and put the kettle on. Boundaries are work you cannot subcontract. On Sundays, Lila brings oranges and I trade her soup. We sit beneath the wall clock and talk about small things on purpose. The neighbor who grows roses with no scent. The way hardware stores smell like possibility and dust. Sometimes my phone buzzes with Adrian's late-night stream of consciousness. I scrubbed the sink, feels like erasing old headlines. Or, I threw out the ring box, kept the box lid for drawing practice. Once, I passed Brightark's office and didn't look up. That last one made me put my palm on the cool face of the clock, as if I could bless time right back. He asked about birthdays, and I said, "Not yet." The word sat between us like a third bowl we were content to leave empty. Boundaries, then maybe birthdays, I texted, then didn't press send. I wanted the thought to practice standing on its own legs before I let it walk. One evening he brought flour on his coat and a small loaf wrapped in a tea towel printed with lemons. "I burned the first one," he admitted, grinning and wincing in the same face. We ate with butter and silence, and the radio low. Between songs, a public service announcement about elder justice murmured, and I felt the room square its shoulders. He looked at the blue jar on my shelf, the way people look at old photographs. "You kept it," he said. "Of course," I answered. The jar has a tiny chip where the light catches, like a smile with a story. He talked about the first time he walked past an argument online and didn't join. "My fingers twitched," he said, "like dogs who learn to fetch even when you didn't throw." He showed me a callus forming where the phone edge used to dent his pinky, and now a pencil rests. I gave him a small sharpener with a brass screw, an old one that feels good in the palm. "Steel and paper," I said, and he didn't flinch. There are still afternoons when the old craving shakes the cupboards. He texts me a single word: loud. I reply with a recipe that requires waiting, beans that need soaking, a stew that demands an hour of simmer, a soup that thickens only if you do not lift the lid. He sends back a photo of steam fogging cheap glass. "I didn't film it," he writes, every time. The repetition becomes a kind of prayer. Some nights, the radiator in his sublet ticks its stubborn beat, and he walks to the corner bodega for milk. He passes a shop window where a TV plays a show he once live-posted about. He doesn't stop. He buys milk and a single daisy with a stem too long for the jar he owns. He trims it with a knife whose blade knows only bread and string. He puts the daisy in a glass and watches it lean. We met with Suri in a cafe that smells like cinnamon and copier paper. She slid a plain envelope across the table, copies of filings, a note about the fund where my donation landed, and a postcard from Ria with a lighthouse stamped in ink. "I found a job that pays me to tell the truth," her handwriting said. I put the postcard on my fridge with a magnet shaped like a spoon. If this were a movie, perhaps we'd end with balloons. We don't. We end with groceries, with receipts that add up, with a lock that clicks, and a blue bead that rolls, and a bowl that empties and gets washed by hand. We end with texts that sometimes go unanswered on purpose, because that is what healing looks like when it tries to grow muscles. Later, back home, I dropped his bead into the jar. One soft clink. The wall clock went on. A letter waited by the door. Another update, more dates circled in red. My phone buzzed once. "Mom, thanks for the soup." I typed, "Boundaries, then maybe birthdays." I watched the cursor blink like a tiny lighthouse in fog and left the message unsent. Not yet. Let the tide prove itself twice.